for two. Kickers are extra, I give them the boot. Ooh, going for two. Sit back, relax while I grab me a brew. Ooh, now I'm reclining while putting my time and I'm ready to go. My spine is aligning and much my lineups, my bank account grow. I am so rich, but knowledge is all that I'm leaving it with. Ooh, listen to this. Multiple options, how far can I get? Ooh, DFS Dynasty redraft tonight, I'm not finishing last. I'm finishing past any and all, I am looking to last. What else? This spot is popping and I am so locked in and only opening the door when it is opportunity knocking. And all of these spots keep on talking and talking. So what are we talking? What kind of alignment? And running it deep, even players forgotten or came from the bottom or hitting that top end. And this spot is popping, yeah, this spot is popping. And woo! This is the armchair, yeah. Put up your arms, yeah. Sound the alarm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ooh.
What is going on, everybody? And we are back, episode 367 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Geoff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at GeoffLambert77. Of course, we are coming off the longest hiatus of the show in 8 years. Me and Ryan haven't potted together since the beginning of December. It feels even longer than that. Of course, you can find us here always on Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. We are on our own website, goingfor2.live, and of course syndicated on all your major podcast networks. I'm here with my aforementioned co-host, Mr. Ryan Searfoss. What's up, Ryan?
Dude, it's weird to be back. I feel like I'm going to be rusty. I'm going to babble. I mean, I always babble, but I feel like I'm really going to babble. But it's good to be back. Good to see Jamie in the chat already. It would feel weird not to see him as the first person in there.
Absolutely. So our seasons ended very, very similarly. Your Ravens lost.
We're just not talking about it. It didn't happen. It's draft season now. That shit didn't happen. It's 2024. We're moving on.
We're just gonna
it didn't happen. Super Bowl didn't happen. Playoffs didn't happen. We're moving on. It's draft season.
Fair enough. All right, we're still not discussing it.
Nope, that's not done.
All right, joining us tonight on short notice, we were going to have Ryan's other co-host come on tonight. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it, but short notice, Brian Ford comes on for us. Of course, he is the host right here on Going for Two Live of the Dynasty Saturday Night 5 show on Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. He also hosts the Dynasty Fever podcast, audio only. What's up, Brian?
Hey, how we doing? I guess I seem to be everybody's favorite second choice. If Fantasy Football Guest was ranked choice voting, I'd probably win. Nobody loves me, but everybody likes me.
Yeah.
You know what? You're just like our NFL teams. I know we want to talk about it, but we're bridesmaids, not the brides. It's all right.
That's what you get for rooting for laundry. I mean, I just,
Yeah, because you don't really have. I mean, I think you claim the New York Jets sort of, kind of, but
yeah, kind of. I grew up a Jets fan in the '80s. When they drafted Ken O'Brien instead of Dan Marino, and and then just over time, I just kind of started caring a lot more about the fantasy side of it than who actually wins or loses.
Weirdly, you are replacing a Jets fan.
Is that Skip?
No, Anthony Corianti.
Oh, Anthony, yeah.
He's also a sorry Jets fan. Hates his life. Tells me all the time. So Jets fan. At least the sadness comes with it. But divulging into fantasy is the way to go.
100%. So, Brian, real quick, talk about your show here on the network and plug Dynasty Fever as well, or anything else you want to talk about.
Yeah, sure. So it's 7:30 Eastern live here on the same YouTube channel. Me and Josh Walker at Rotonaut do the Dynasty Saturday Night 5. We kind of do this, I don't want to call it a gimmick, but it's a vehicle for talking about Dynasty Fantasy Football by doing lists of 5. So last week it was 5 early rookie takes. It might be 5 free agents, whatever. That sort of thing. And then Dynasty Fever midweek is audio only at Dynasty Fever Pod. That's me and Jesse Schneeman from the Dynasty Warzone family of content. We're a little different. I think we're not that Josh and I don't have thoughtful conversations, but like my tagline for Dynasty Fever is like thoughtful Dynasty podcast that like your league mates don't know about, because we're tiny, but sometimes we'll go like 2.5 hours, split the episodes up into 2 or 3, and really dig into like these conversations. And like I always have much more questions than I do answers, and I like that about fantasy football. When people have like really strong conviction and certainty and do this and dominate and buy now, I get a little skeptical.
Fair enough. I love it. All right, guys. As always, today's show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Check out their best ball leagues with huge tournaments, private leagues, and of course, they got pick'ems for all major sports. NBA, of course, is big right now. Sign up with our promo code GF2 and get a deposit match up to $100. It's as simple as that. Sign up, use promo code GF2, and you can start drafting best ball teams. It is now best ball season. And our very own the B League, Dan at the B League says, does a best ball / pick'em show. It's best ball in the off season. I think he put up one a couple weeks ago. He'll be doing them throughout the season, so make sure you check that out right here. It'll be on Friday nights around 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can check his show out as well right here on the network, of course. So we got a great show planned tonight. Of course, Ryan mentioned earlier, it is rookie season. It's all about the rookies. So we're going to do a rookie primer. We're going to talk mostly running backs and receivers tonight. We'll do some listener questions, and of course, we'll always end the show with our forgotten fantasy player. But we kick things off, as always, with our nonsense draft.
Attention, everyone. Let's mock draft.
All right, today we are drafting the best time travel movies / TV shows of all time. Any show or TV show that had, some kind of element of time travel is eligible. And as always, the guest gets to go first here. So you have the 101, Brian. What you got?
So imagine if someone had the 101 and didn't take Caleb Williams. That's what I'm going to do and go with a movie from 2004 called Primer. Not a lot of people know about this movie. It's a very subtle, subdued kind of time travel movie. It's like a couple 20-something, 30-something engineers, and like the time travel device is essentially they're just like getting in a box, and there's all this weird stuff going on in the movie and these time loops and a guy with a conversation that he had before in his ear so he can have it again with the same. And like the fans of this movie have all these like graphs and charts and theories and stuff online about what the movie means and what's really going on. Honestly, it's the best time travel movie I ever saw because it's like not clownish. It's just like, this could be real. This is eerie.
What's this called again?
It's called Primer, right?
Primer, released in 2004.
I've never seen it or even heard of it. Even in my research for this, it didn't pop up as one of the top ones. It sounds very interesting. I'm going to have to check it out. Jamie said he's going to sign out if it wasn't Terminator. Well, see you, Jamie.
So I searched Primer, and it took me the stuff to put it around Paint, even when it says Primer movie. So I feel like it's going to be a hard search. But
all right, I got the 102 here, and I probably would have gone. What was that, Ryan?
No, you're good.
Oh,
you're good.
I got the 102 here, so I probably would have gone with it at the 101 as well. But I'm going to go with Back to the Future, 80s movie. Obviously, it's sort of the chalk pick. I think anybody would have taken this one in the top three at least. Obviously it's a trilogy, but the first one I think is definitely my favorite of the group. But Back to the Future for sure for me would have been my 101 had I had the first pick. All right, Ryan, you got the 103.
I am sorry to upset Jamie, and I agree that it's an absurdly good movie and should be in the contention for it. But I'm going a little goofy here. I'm going Hot Tub Time Machine.
Nice.
Where Brian wanted something realistic and could happen, I'm going with just absurdity and debauchery. It's so fun. I love both of them, and just the stupidity that comes with what could happen with these people. I love it.
Yeah, that was definitely. So I have a list. I actually have 11 movies. I don't know why I listed 11, but I highlighted 3 of them that I would have taken, with my picks had they come up, and that was one of them. Hot Tub Time Machine. That's an article that I even put out every year that I kind of do a look back. I always call it the Hot Tub Time Machine article. I kind of play off of that, so that's a great choice for sure. All right, Brian, back to you at the 201 here.
Yeah, I'm going to take the value that dropped and go with Terminator 1, the classic. I think it's 84, right? Arnold, appears in the past, like basically naked, right? And what I really love about that movie is I identify with the Terminator a little bit because like he'll get input and then there's those choices, like should I do this, or the response. And like when I'm doing my best, I like, don't do that. That'll get you in trouble. Don't do that. Okay, do this. Yeah. And so that's, Terminator.
Nice. You had the little heads-up display too? That would be awesome. Yeah, great choice there. That should have been, that could have been easily top one. It's a great movie. and I won't cheat and pick part two. We'll just kind of include that as a 201. So the 202, I'm gonna take. So this is a single movie in a series of movies. I think there's a total of 8 movies, but there's one movie of the series that deals a lot of time travel. And it's kind of fresh on my mind because my daughter just went through and watched all these movies for the second or third or fourth time. And of the group, this is probably my favorite one. But it's Harry Potter, the Prisoner of I can't even say that word.
Azkaban. Yeah.
Azkaban, yes. I was never a fan of the books, and I was actually never even watched the movies until my daughter got really big into it. But that was my favorite one of the group, where the Hermione is traveling back and forth in time, and at the end, it kind of has a really cool ending. I don't want to spoil it for those that haven't seen it, but it's the best one of the series in my opinion. So that's what I'll take here at the 202. Ryan, you get the 203.
I am going animated comic book movie in Justice League's The Flashpoint Paradox. It's like one of the biggest stories in comic books that they brought into the animated, which they've had other versions and they tried doing movies, screwed up, and TV shows did okay. But the animated version, Flashpoint, with Barry Allen going back to try to save his mother and just causing Batman to be murdering people and all this chaos and to try to rewrite all of history. It's just such a great story. The voicing in it is unreal with everybody they bring for it, with like Michael B. Jordan, obviously Kevin Conroy, Ron Perlman. It's great.
That's a great choice. That's not on my list, so that's an awesome choice there. Like I said, I have 11 listed, and so far, besides the one that I've taken, y'all have only taken one of mine. So great stuff so far. All right, Brian, this is your last pick of the draft, the 301 here. What you got?
Yeah, because I could probably get this TV show as an undrafted free agent after this. I should probably do like Bill and Ted or something right now, but I'm gonna do a TV show. Quantum Leap.
You took that was mine. It wasn't going to go undrafted.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if I was going to sneak that by people. It's a little, like, I don't know. It's kind of dated and maybe, I don't know, campy-ish a little bit with parts of it, looking back on it these days. But, it was a fun watch, just to see the antics that he would get into and then like where he'd leap to next. And Hal, his whatever, that was like guiding him through all this stuff, big role in also in Battlestar Galactica, the remake TV show, which was one of my faves.
Yeah, that's a very good one because that was definitely my next pick here. So you got me left scrambling a little bit trying to figure out which one I want to go with next. You had mentioned Bill and Ted. That's definitely on my list here, but let me go with probably the last movie. I should just say the last non-kids movie because I've definitely seen movies, but the last movie I've seen in the theaters that I went to watch for myself, not because I was with my daughter. And
Is this
it's
like
been a while.
80s?
It's not quite that old. But it's Avengers Endgame. Obviously, traveling back in time to collect all the Infinity Stones, and that whole scene, how when they first come back, from being basically erased from existence, and how that all plays out. Probably one of my best like fight type scenes in any movie. So yeah, I'll take the Avengers Endgame here at the 302. Ryan, close us out here.
I'm so disappointed that didn't pop in my head for time travel. Like, I had the list of time travel movies. I didn't see it on there, and I don't know why it didn't pop in my head because I've seen it the most out of any movie we've talked about, other than maybe Terminator. I'm going super obscure, though, for mine. I'm going to this every year. My wife goes into, like, deep cut horror movies, and this year we watched a movie called Totally Killer. It's about this dude who kills a bunch of people and kills this girl's mom, and she goes back in time to the 80s and basically becomes friends with her mom and tries to catch this killer. It's completely absurd. It's very, very, very campy, and I loved it.
What was it called again? What was the name?
Totally Killer.
Totally Killer. Yeah, definitely was not on my list. I've never even heard of that movie.
No, I don't know. I don't know how I heard of it. Like, it was like,
So-
she's like, I saw this weird movie. I mean, it was like on like a horror movie only streaming service, but it was great. It was so bad. I loved it.
Can I just do one more honorable mention?
Sure.
Because it's like, it's time travel, but it's also like subtle-ish. Donnie Darko doesn't
That's
always
great.
get talked about as a time travel movie because it's not like the traditional time travel movie. and it's a really good movie.
Yeah, that's a good one. That was definitely on my list as well. Couple from the chat here. Robbie is talking about Land of the Lost. It did go on draft. Sorry, Robbie. Butterfly Effect from Jamie. He mentions that one. Looper was another one that was mentioned. Jumanji, is that a time travel movie? I don't know. Does that qualify?
No, I
as
don't think it's time travel.
Yeah, I don't think there's. A couple other ones I had that I really liked that we didn't mention. Frequency, if y'all ever seen that one, where he's talking basically on the radio to his dad, who died as a firefighter, I believe was the storyline. That was a pretty good one.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, sorry if you haven't seen it. Bill and Ted, we mentioned. We didn't draft it, but we did mention Bill and Ted. And then Minority Report. I wasn't sure if that really qualified as time travel. But I had that on my list as well. Tom Cruise. Any more honorable mentions for you, Ryan?
No, I think you hit most of them. There's so many time travel movies and shows.
Absolutely.
Like, it just like special, like specifically one episodes of shows.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Usually we do news and notes at this point, but at this point in the season, there's not really a whole lot of news and notes. So we're going to jump right into our rookie draft primer, and we'll kick it off here with the running backs.
It's time for running backs. Running backs.
All right, so I asked these guys to bring a couple of their, top 12-ish running backs to the table. We'll talk about each one of them here. And Brian, in typical Brian fashion, brought two guys that me and Ryan haven't really looked at much. I have not watched either one of these guys. So Brian, why don't you kick us off here with your first guy on the list there?
Yeah, so I'm going to do a guy who's sort of toward the top of my top 12. I really have just a really just squished tier of 8 guys, and it's just like, well, they're not separated by much. I have certain guys I like more than others, but certainly could shuffle up a lot depending on, not so much combine, but definitely, draft capital and landing spot, that sort of thing, right? And I think that's kind of true for a lot of people. It's kind of like we have a couple faves, but we recognize that it's very landing spot dependent this year because it's pretty flat at the top. And so my RB3 is a guy who seems to be gaining some steam, and want to give credit to Christian Williams from Debbie Royale and Football Guys, who kind of put this guy on my radar as someone to look into a little more that I didn't know enough about. And that's Jalen Wright. So my RB3 at the moment, his real special trait is his speed, his breakaway speed, but that's not all he's got. I think he's got, enough wiggle from right before the line of scrimmage to right after it. I think he can be, a good receiver. I think he's got pretty good contact balance, especially for his size. And is not bad at pass pro, which is good because that's going to give you even more opportunities to be a 3-down back. And what pass pro does is not necessarily say, oh, well, we don't care because we want him to catch passes on third downs. So as long as he's catching passes, I don't care. Yes, but what also happens when you can stay on and do pass pro like Kyron Williams, the defense doesn't know what you're doing. You can do run or pass, and that's important, to keep a defense on its toes. And running backs who have, who can be on the field third down but don't have the pass pro skill set, there's just that one aspect that just gives him just that much more of a boost. He's young. He's going to be 21 at draft day. He doesn't have a whole lot of carry, so he's going to need some reps and become a little more refined in his running, and probably work on elusiveness a little better. But he's someone 5'11", 210, so he's got pretty solid size. I don't really see him probably getting too many goal line touches unless he lands on a team that is just desperate for that. Some comps that I've seen out there are Etienne and Tevin Coleman. Tevin Coleman, credit to Football Guys rookie guide on that one. I like him. I think he's scheme versatile, which is good for a running back. And I think he's going to be someone who probably goes, a lot of these running backs, I'm looking at my list. It's like late day 2, early day 3, late day 2, early day 3, late day 2, early day. That's just what it is, right? And that's
it's picking your flavor.
Yeah. He's rounds 3 to 5, and I think he's if there's a guy that I want to swing on for his skill set that could translate to 3 downs plus the upside of the breakaway speed, let me go with Jalen Wright.
Yeah, it was one thing because I looked at him before the show. I wanted to make sure I had some information. I said I haven't watched him yet, but I went and looked looked at a few people that I trust. And one of the things that, we do this when we look at running backs a lot of times is you can copy and paste bad at pass protection on pretty much every running back coming out of college. And he's one of the few guys that that came up as a positive, good in pass protection, which, as you mentioned, gets him on the field. Even if he's in there just to pass block, there could always be a checkout where he's not going to stay back and block, and he goes out and, just to be on the field. You can't score points if you're sitting on the bench. So getting on the field in pass pro is definitely a big part of his game there. So good call on that one. Ryan, we'll go to you next here. You got your boy, Mr. Trey Benson, who I have ranked, I think, in my top 3 here. Talk about him a little bit.
I do want to say I completely agree with Brian said about draft capital for every one of his running backs. Like, any running back that you're going to watch who shows any bit of skill could go anywhere from late 2 to or day 2, day 3. Like, no, it's everybody can go any order. I'm going to Trey Benson. I think he's just a nice, big, strong bruising back. He's very good north-south runner. He has good enough breakaway speed to take chunk yardage plays, and he's caught close to 40 he's close, just shy of 40 passes in his 2 years at Florida State. So he's well-rounded enough where he can stay on the field. Again, like Kenny said, he can pass block and keeps him on the field. And he produced both years on minimum carries at Florida State. And for being a big back who grinds, he doesn't have a ton of knowledge. He definitely struggles with cutback lanes and vision at times. Those are things that have to be worked on, but I don't think you're going to have any back without warts. But the upside with the size speed combination, I think, could be very interesting for a team in the right situation.
Yeah, I like Trey Benson a lot. A lot of things you mentioned there are, I had on my list as well as good things. And I think I currently have him in my top 3 for my running back. So I think his
yours is my favorite back. Yours is my favorite back I watched so far, by the way.
Yeah, so this is interesting because when I was originally thinking we were going to be talking to Anthony, I was going to bring up that 2 of the rankers for going for 2 had my guy at their number 1 running back. It turns out one of those guys that had it at number 1 is on the panel now because Anthony couldn't make the show. But Mr. Bucky Irving, coming out of Oregon. So this is a guy that I hadn't heard a whole lot about until I heard Ryan McDowell's podcast, and they talked about him a little bit, talked about how explosive he is and how exciting he looks. And so I went and watched him, and he does. I mean, he jumps off, as far as explosive. He's a little bit smaller, 5'9", 190 is what he's listed at here on the Draft Network. But one of the notes that I had is he plays big, right? He seeks contact, which could be a good thing and a bad thing at the next level, being a smaller guy. Sometimes those small guys that seek contact, unfortunately, will end up getting hurt. But he's got good vision, very, very good lateral agility, shiftiness, good contact balance for a guy his size. The one thing he does struggle at, and struggles immensely, is pass protection. There's actually a cut up on YouTube just to show how bad his protection is and how much he's whiffed on some guys and just made the wrong reads. So that's one thing he definitely has to improve upon, especially if he's going to be a third down back and be on the field for those situations. But talking about home run speed, he looks the part for sure. And we've seen it last year. We've kind of always talked about these smaller guys, and how it's a negative. And Ryan, me, I've always been the guy that likes those small running backs that never seem to pan out. And then last year, for the first time, I don't like the smaller running backs, the Devin A-Chain and the Jameer Gibbs, and both of those guys pop off. So
Just matters.
It's one of those things that you got to kind of make sure you temper expectations with him because he's a smaller guy. But I want to turn it over to you, Brian, because like I said, I mentioned you had him at number 1, at least in the rankings that I published on the graphic. You had him at number 1. If you want to talk about him a little bit, anything that I didn't mention.
Yeah, Geoff said at least on the rankings graphic he posts, because he knows that I update my rankings every effing 2 hours in my Fantasy Pro because I'm a weirdo. But no, I still have him at 1, and I have him at 1 simply because I call it like a placeholder. He's my acting number 1. I expect him to probably be my number 2 when it's all said and done. He's just my 1 now because I have the most confidence that his skill set will translate to today's NFL and to fantasy football. I think I see him on a spectrum of Gio Bernard, Gainwell, Gibson, and then there's maybe, a James Cook and then like a Gibbs way over on the other end. He's probably in that between Gibson and Cook range. And I think if he can do some James Cookian stuff, we're going to like him. Because right now at Dynasty running back, I have James Cook in my top 10, sometimes just for lack of somebody else to put there. Like it's just after the first 4 or 5 backs, there's not a lot of high confidence guys.
100%.
And so I think Urban can pop off.
Yeah. Good
The
stuff.
one thing you mentioned how he's not good at the pass protection. The one thing that popped off for him, I think that we actually kind of skipped over that I didn't see out of the other top backs we watched, is his ability to find cutback lanes and really move in traffic, where like almost all the other top backs are just try to follow where the hole is. Nothing's there. They don't make it back. They're not creative. He does that. He had a jump cut against, it was in the Washington game where he had a cut back on his like 14-yard touchdown. And it was fantastic. No one else I've watched so far has done one single move like that. And it shouldn't be that's the thing that makes it pop, but it really does with the way this class is that little 100%. Bit of electric.
Let me ask you a question, Ryan, because you have been doing this deeper and longer than I have as far as like film watching and college and rookies and all that. How much do you sprinkle in to the formula of he's doing it against Pac-12 tackling?
I mean,
does it matter much to you?
I mean, everything has to matter, but you can't could be worse. Like we've seen guys do it in the ACC, and we've seen them do it back when like Rutgers, when it was the Big East. It's just like LaShawn McCoy was in the Big East roasting people, and he's playing against Rutgers in West Virginia. You have to just figure out and watch enough games. Hopefully they play enough good competition where you've seen it. Luckily, Oregon has played some good games and tough teams this year where you got to see it. It definitely matters. And like if you're seeing a guy getting open field tackled a lot, going down on first contact.
And he did have a good game against Utah, which is the best defense in that conference. So it's encouraging.
Yeah, and like I said, you didn't see him go down on first contact a lot. Like Jonathan Brooks, who's viewed very highly, goes down on first contact a lot. And that's a big difference with possibly like similar things that he can do well. But he went down a lot easier than Irving. And I think you have to just kind of take what you can get off it. And just kind of like go a little bit tighter end.
Yeah, I agree. Ryan, I'm gonna kick this back to you because the guy you have on your list next here is a guy that when I put the rankings out just recently, people were all over the place. People either had him as their RB1. People said that he didn't even belong in the top 12. They were kind of all over the place. Blake Corum, talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny. Like last year, when I thought Blake Corum was going to announce earlier, I liked him more than I liked him this year. He's kind of he's a lot of question marks. Smaller size and stature, but runs very hard. He's been you talk about being blessed going against Pac-12 defenses. He's going behind he's running behind a line of absolute monsters. I think he's a rotational back. I don't think there's many 3-down backs in this. I think you're going to see him not be over 150 carries, 30 to 40 catches. I think he's proficient enough as a pass catcher. You can see him doing enough spread out. There's a ton of it, but the flashes are there. He runs very north-south. He's another one. He doesn't have like as much juice as you'd like to see for that size. But in the right system, like weirdly enough, for a smaller back, him in a power running team would be good. But there's definitely question marks. I like him. I think the draft capital and how his measurements at the combine, if he's coming in at good size, I think all that matters. It makes him an interesting prospect. I don't think you can throw him out. But I think there's definitely a lot to look at. And there's a lot to like. Like he can break through. He breaks tackles. He runs through arm tackles. He runs very hard for his size. And he's
I heard
what'd you say?
I said I heard a good landing spot for him would be with the Chargers, who obviously now have Jim Harbaugh there. What are your thoughts on if he was to go there?
I mean, you still need that line. Like, he's going from the best line in college football to a Chargers line with question marks. And we were talking about pass protection with Jalen Wright earlier. I don't want a guy who's that small pass protector for my franchise quarterback when my offensive line's not that great.
100% agree. 100% agree. All right, Brian, we're going to go to you next here. Isaiah Davis. And the one thing that when I looked him up before the show that I come across on a couple different websites is NFL Build Workhorse Profile. What are your thoughts on Isaiah Davis and why you like him so much?
Isaiah Davis of the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, for those who may not know. The Jackrabbits are kind of quickly becoming like one of those schools that guys with a chance to hit in the NFL who slip through the cracks, best FCS team in the country kind of thing, and you kind of have to say, okay, well, he's jumping to a certain competition level, and from what we've seen, and again, the Senior Bowl is what it is, and it's a small part of people's grades, and kind of people know what they are going into it, and the running backs is kind of weird because most of the stuff they're doing is pass pro and catching and that sort of stuff. But all reports are that when he was with other, Power 5 and Group of 5, prospects at the Senior Bowl, that he did well, that he showed himself well in pass pro and receiving. What you said about him is true. I think he has a solid skill set and a solid build. So in other words, he's 6 foot 220. It's a nice solid build, NFL size. And he's got a well-rounded skill set. He's not going to be one of those guys who has an elite trait anywhere, but I think he's got, all his traits are good. He's good enough with agility. He's good enough with burst and acceleration. He's got power. He's got smarts and some nuance. I think, obviously, with the jump from FCS to NFL, there's going to be some stuff that he needs to work on, right? And there's just going to be some just reps and how fast the game moves and that kind of stuff. But, if you're looking for, say you double tap wide receiver first and second round, because a lot of running backs are going in the second round now. Josh's boy, Estime, and basically everybody, right? Going in the second round. If you double tap wide receiver, right? If you take, I don't know, say you're at the 108 and you're taking Worthy, and then later on you're taking, I don't know, like a Lad McConkey or, 208 Jalen Polk, Malachi Corley, that kind of guy, right? You take a swing on Davis in the third round, right? Because, of the guys that are kind of in that, tier after the top 8 for me, he's a guy who has potential to be a 3-down skill set, but still probably be in a committee, but not have to be taken off the field, on third down.
Yeah, that's a good call. I like that. I'm going to have to go back and watch him too, because I saw a lot of good things mentioned about him in my limited research before the show. I'll close it out here with the running backs with the guy that Ryan already kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, Jonathan Brooks. And the real thing I wanted to sort of ask a question is how much does the injury that he had back in November, ACL, I believe, how much does that affect where you think he gets drafted in the NFL, and how much are you willing to spend on him in your rookie drafts, Ryan, to get this guy? Like, how do you feel about Jonathan Brooks?
Dude, I'm not taking that injury was so late in the season. I know ACLs are something guys get over quickly, but you're going to miss camp, which means getting that first year in is going to be tough. The timing of it's bad. He has questions for me. I think he's a good back. I don't believe he's an every down back in the NFL because of just certain deficiencies. I don't know if I'm taking him before the third round in rookie drafts.
Yeah,
it's a dart throw, and I'm not comfortable. I'm still not confident with it. I want to be, but I'm not.
Yeah, I think I've seen him go in the second round into mock drafts, and I think people are just kind of dismissing the injury for some reason. But I think the NFL is going to obviously pay attention to that. I think he's going to fall in the draft capital that we so covet. He's not going to get that draft capital because of the injury, which is going to lower him in our rookie drafts. And I think he could end up in the third. Brian, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I'm actually going to just gently and nicely push back on that because I like to be gentle and nice. just like Ryan is longer and deeper than me. I have him as my RB2, and I probably see him better than Ryan does. I don't know about like way better, but the reason I kind of have shoved him up there is because everywhere you see all like, the mock aggregators and the NFL buzz and that kind of thing is that this guy could be the first running back taken off the board. So you have to think to yourself, well, I have to think to myself. One might think to themselves, this guy had a November ACL injury, right? Had to compete on a depth chart with Bijan, Roshan, Cedric Baxter, Jaden Blue, became the starter, and the NFL said he got a good enough grade feedback where the NFL scouts are saying, yeah, you can come out after year 3. Go ahead, do it. Because that means they like him that much. I think he does need to work on things like putting on weight, which will improve the contact balance. I probably see that as a little better than Ryan does. But yeah, I think actually think the NFL draft buzz is real. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
It's just anytime he's like any rap, I just feel like he doesn't get through on tackles at all in college, and that's against Big 12 competition. That's what scares me. If you just bump him, yeah, he's gonna break, and I think he's fine. But as soon as you get those hands on him, I think he's going down. If that makes sense, like the disparity between those two things.
The negative I had on it was his size. I mean, he's 6 foot even, I believe. He's just over 200 pounds, and he runs with a high pad level, which is another thing that I didn't like either. And you have a guy that's already kind of tall and skinny for a running back at least, and then you're going to run with a high pad level too.
He's going to be asked to do more of the between the tackles type of stuff than Bucky Irving is. So he needs to add a little more onto that 207. You know what I mean? Whereas I'm not all that concerned about Bucky, unless maybe he comes in at the combine at like 180 or 185 for some reason, which I don't think he will if he's smart.
Yeah.
To eat that peanut butter.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's one advantage he has too, because he's not going to be able to run or anything. Obviously none of the drills he can do. So just put some weight on, just so he can get that weight up, for the combine, so he can get that on the sheet. That'll help him out. All right, let's get to some of the receivers.
And now, wide receivers.
I'm going to kick us off here because I've gotten so much hate for this guy that I have currently as my wide receiver 3. He's going in mock drafts towards the end of the first round. A lot of people don't like him for some reason. But Keon Coleman, I love Keon Coleman. I actually he was one of my first scouting reports that I put out on Facebook, and it still has the most hits on this because it got into a quite a heated argument with him. But I just think, I know people kind of point to his last season here where he struggled a little bit with contested catches, which is supposed to be kind of his thing. I think he, was 50% contested catches this year, where I think he was like 60 or 70% the year before that. But I just think his body type translates better to the NFL. Like, maybe he struggled a little bit this past year, but he is 6'4", I forget the 225. He's in that. He's a big receiver. Yeah, he's a big boy.
I have him at 215.
215. Yeah, so he's definitely one of those receivers that I think he could be one of those kind of guys that translates better to the NFL than in college. Where in college, I think speed is everything. Not that speed isn't everything in the NFL, but I think you can succeed in the NFL being a guy as big as he is and as physical as he is, because we've seen big guys before come out that just aren't physical, and he has the physicality. He's great at the catch point. He's great at the line of scrimmage trying to beat, the press man. He doesn't have the long speed that you would hope to have, but I think for what he's going to be asked to do in the NFL, he won't need it. And, of course, at that size and that height, he's going to be a huge red zone threat as well. So I love Keon Coleman. I actually have him currently ranked a little bit higher than Rome Odunze. They're pretty much neck and neck, but I gave the slight edge to Keon Coleman. So he's kind of, my guy this year, so to speak. My guy last year was Zay Flowers. This Keon Coleman's kind of my guy this year. I'm curious, Ryan, because you're the Florida State fan. What are your thoughts on Keon Coleman?
I love Keon Coleman. I think he's a beast. He definitely has warts. You mentioned the contested catches. He has a lot of just like concentration drops. Like it happened all year. You saw it. They went through some stuff later in the year and he kind of fell off, but when they were clicking, when they had their starting quarterback, he was a monster. But he make also the one-handed catch, and he makes plays. He can run after the catch. He runs through defenders. There's a lot to like. Raw talent wise, it's worth the chance. Like raw talent wise, you have him in wide receiver 3, no question. I like that skill set is rare. It's just, can he put it all together? At his floor, could he be a Mike Williams type, which is decent enough in fantasy? Might not be great, but I think he has a good floor because of that red zone potential and the fact that there's not many guys like that to get on the field.
Yeah, so I wrote, it was my first scouting report that I told you I did it on goingfor2.com, and I had a floor comp and a ceiling comp. I'm curious, Ryan, to what you think. My floor comp was Cortland Sutton. My ceiling comp was Des Bryant.
I don't hate it. I had Vincent Jackson for mine. So
yeah, another big receiver. I like it.
Yeah, it's really easy to comp the big receivers.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because there's not that many guys who are really built like that and athletic.
Yep. All right, Brian, let's go to you. You got one of my favorite guys at the top of your list there that I'm curious to your thoughts on. Another guy that's been getting a little bit of, you can see him going pretty much mid first round, and I see him fall down to as low as the late second, late first, early second, Mr. Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, I chose him because, for me personally, I had the big three of, Harrison and Neighbors and Adunze. And then I have a tier of Worthy, Troy Franklin, and Brian Thomas, right? And so in that bucket, in that second bucket, I chose Worthy because I think he's not getting enough love. And I hate saying that because a lot of times that turns into like a straw man argument because like you just Google him or whatever and look on Twitter and people are talking about Xavier Worthy. But I feel like there's more steam on Franklin and Thomas. And there's a lot that goes into that about why that might be. People don't understand where the added short game, added really, twitchy route running to his game. He's not just a deep threat like I think some people want to make him out to be. He's fast and he's quick. The drops have a lot of context. They have a hand injury context. They have a Quinn Ewers context. They have a Malik Murphy context. They have those are concentration drops, not technique drops that they improved from 2022 to 2023. So I think people are a little overdoing it a little with the drops. When I think about the way today's NFL is being played, and I'm really trying to do that when I look at these rookie rankings, that's why I love a guy like Worthy. He can be used the way that Jamison Williams was used at Alabama. He's got a little Waddle in his game, a little Hollywood Brown in his game. He's got a heavier Tank Dell to his game. He's like 20 pounds heavier than Tank Dell, right? I think I think people are just kind of like, well, they saw the freshman breakout in 2021, which was one of the best freshman seasons ever. And then, like, because there was a bit of a downturn after that on a team that had, Bijan, Roshan, Cedric Baxter, Adonai Mitchell, Jordan Whittington, Jatavian Sanders, right? Like, I think people are kind of, forgetting about him. Like, he's old news, prospect fatigue, something like that, right? And so I really love Worthy. He's my wide receiver 4 right now. When we think about what the recent misses have been, big guys, right?
Sure.
And that's why I don't like Keon Coleman. That's why I don't like Xavier Legette. It's not the only reason why, but when I think about where I'm arranging these buckets, right? I got the 3 high confidence guys. I got these next 3 guys that I think have a great floor ceiling combo. And then it starts, then I'll take my slot guys, my PPR machines like Ladd McConkey and Roman Wilson, an athletic guy like Adonai Mitchell, and then some question marks around guys like Coleman, Legette, a guy I'm going to talk about later, Malachi Corley. Jalen Polk's a solid floor guy, but not much of a ceiling. And then it just starts to just be this giant tier of who the heck knows, right? And so, I think Worthy's the guy that when I think about today's NFL, if he goes to the right team and is used well, I like wheels up.
Yeah, that's 100%. I think right team is definitely where he needs to fit. He's not one of those that can fit into any scheme, but I do think if he gets that right fit for 100%, he's going to be a beast. We're going to stick with the Xaviers, and Ryan, you got an Xavier as well on your list.
I know Brian just said he didn't like him or questioned him. We're just always off in draft season for some reason. But no, I think Xavier Leggett, a lot of people seem down on him and lower on the rankings than I am. I know, like he said, the bigger receivers are harder to hit on, and we've seen a lot of misses. A lot of it is they're bad separators. They're only winning at the catch point and limited route trees. I do agree his route tree is definitely limited. Some of it might be the fact he's in South Carolina, but he is able to create separation at the catch point as well as at the top of his routes. He wins on comeback routes. He has a little bit of wiggle at the top of his stems where he creates room where he doesn't just have to win on jump balls. And the fact that he's a just brick shit house at close to 230 pounds, it can run through people and has enough speed to break away. There's a lot to like with that upside. Yes, there's questions, but you know what, man? He performed against the SEC. We talk about playing against competition. He had 7 for 71 against Georgia, who's was the number one team in the country at the time and one of the best defenses in football. He performed against multiple SEC teams. He's done it, and he can win on a team that doesn't have a great quarterback play, doesn't have that great of a team. He has the upside to produce. And that skill set has got his size, speed combination, something's going to get him on the field and get him the opportunity, because part of the thing with rookies is players who have the opportunity.
Yeah, now what do you think of his comp? I've heard a popular comp being Deebo Samuel. What do you think of that?
No, I don't like that. I think we're just anyone who can run through tackle Deebo Samuel.
Exactly
it's just such bullshit now. I hate that. I don't really have a comp for him yet. But as I said, the strong receivers, like, he's not the route runner that he is, but like one of the big things we saw with Puka Nacua is he was able to fight through contact, run through tacklers, and that helped make him successful. Running through tacklers makes you successful, especially if you're a big guy, and he can do that.
Yeah, I like that. All right, so my second guy that I want to talk about, and I wanted to have two guys that are, somewhat different to talk about, and I could pick a guy that's completely different from Keon Coleman. I mentioned Keon Coleman doesn't have deep speed. Mr. Troy Franklin has that elite deep speed. And I mentioned how physical Keon Coleman is, and Troy Franklin is not physical. He's basically the opposite of Keon Coleman. He got the speed, lacks the physicality. He does kind of wait for the ball to get to him. He doesn't really attack the ball in contested situations. But he's exciting to watch. If you put the tape on, he jumps off the page. He is really exciting. I was trying to do comps for him last night because I'm currently writing up my scouting report on him, and I was having a hard time finding comps, and I kept coming up with Robbie Chosen Anderson was my best comp that I can come up with, because he's tall, but he's very thin. I think he's 6'2" or 6'3", like 185. So he's like really tall and thin. So that's going to hurt him in the NFL if he can't, get that physical nature to him. But we know teams are going to, draft him highly because of that speed. Teams love the speed, and I have the fear that he might end up being one of those guys that's better for an NFL team than he is for fantasy, where he's sort of opening the field up for other receivers because of that elite speed downfield. But he's going to have those games where he catches 3 passes for 150 yards and a touchdown, and then have games where he disappears and you don't see him the entire game. So I think he's going to be one of those guys that be hard to figure out. But he does have route running. That's one thing that separates him from some of the guys that I've talked about that kind of boom bust. He can run some routes. So I think that has a little bit of advantage to him going into the NFL and translating it to be more of a complete receiver instead of just a one-trick pony. But I'm curious, Brian, to your thoughts. I saw you nodding there and some of my thoughts on Troy Franklin. What are your thoughts on Mr. Franklin?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he's got a frame that can put on weight. So, I mean, that's encouraging, right? Like if you're 6'3", 187, like it's thin, but at the same time, we talk about like the recent misses, and we talk about like the data not catching up to, BMI not really mattering. And we look at like Devonta Smith or, Jordan Addison and guys like that. It's Tank Dell, obviously, right? I don't worry too much about it. I think there are people who are a little divided on like, did the physicality improve from one year to the next and things like that. I think he's got a good floor ceiling combo. My worry is, like you said, like, does he turn into Gabe Davis? Which is interesting because a lot of people are mocking him to the Bills at like whatever that is, 28, right? I don't know. Like then you're kind of stuck with what you said. Do I think he's a better prospect and better player than Gabe Davis with a higher ceiling? Absolutely, right? But that's within the range of outcomes if he lands on a team that uses him that way. I think either way, you're looking at an NFL wide receiver 2 who is going to outperform a bunch of NFL teams' wide receiver 1s on a bunch of weeks, throughout his career.
Yep.
And also therefore do that in your fantasy league. But it's probably going to be slightly less predictable than I think, a guy like Xavier Worthy, or of course, very good predictability, I think, of guys like McConkey and Roman Wilson.
Yeah, fair enough.
He's going to be a best ball and DFS.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm afraid of. He's being drafted, or being mocked at least in Dynasty rookie mocks in the first round, and makes me a little bit nervous taking him there. But we have seen these kind of guys succeed in the NFL, recently as well. So like you mentioned, Devonta Smith being one of them, but then you got guys like Jerry Jeudy that was kind of in that same mold, and he has not panned out. So it's a tough sell there. Ryan, I'm gonna go to you next because you have a guy that's at the top. He might be, if he's not in that tier 1, he's pretty damn close to that tier 1.
I put him there. I want to talk about Malik Neighbors for one reason only. It's because he is a lot closer to, he's not as good as Marvin Harrison, but he's a lot closer than people are giving him credit for. Like, he is a wide receiver 1 in a lot of draft classes. He gets open. He's explosive. He runs after the catch. He's the complete package. And he has a chance to be viewed as a top 10 fantasy wide receiver off the rip. Like, he's somebody, when I go through to my Dynasty rankings post-draft, I can definitely see him being in my top 10. And I just wanted to bring that up because I think if you don't have that Marvin Harrison pick, it's not time to be sad. I see the Neighbors over Harrison thing could be a thing. I'm not there, but I just think it's much closer.
Yeah, Janie is in a mock draft that we're doing currently, and he told me that he would have taken Neighbors over Harrison. He had the 101. If I hadn't told him that it was for my official ADP for the website, we're updating the ADP. So he said he would have taken Neighbors over Harrison, but because it was for the ADP, he stuck with the game plan and went with Marvin Harrison. So appreciate that, Jamie. But yeah, I've heard that in a lot of draft classes, Malik Neighbors is the wide receiver 1 easy. I fully believe he's a superstar in the league. Like, he has everything you want. Yeah, I'm almost. Let me ask you this, Ryan: if you had the ability to take Marvin Harrison, could you take a king's ransom for him, knowing that you could move back and get Malik Neighbors?
Yes,
that's something you would consider doing.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. Yeah, if I can move back a couple spots and give up Harrison and get Neighbors and either get a couple first couple, so you can get a couple firsts when it comes to Marvin Harrison. Yeah. He's that kind of prospect. If I can land a couple extra firsts or a starting caliber player, top 24 player at receiving position, yeah, I'm doing it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
If we're talking non-super flex, he's my 2. Super flex, he's in my top 5. Like, he's an auto pick for me.
Yep, I agree. All right, Brian, you mentioned this guy a couple times tonight, Malachi Corley, as one of your guys that you like. Talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, I know he's buzzy and getting steam. By the way, my nightmare scenario for Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors is that they go to New England at 3 and the Giants at 6. And
dude, don't even put the Giants into existence. We don't know about the Patriots. The Patriots could be anything. We don't know.
Yeah.
They're completely different. But dude, I don't want to talk about the Giants thing. That's gross.
Right? Yeah.
So I hope Rome goes there. Just
the reason I want to talk about Corley is I want to use him as an example of what I was talking a little bit about before is landing spot and how the NFL is played today. Malachi Corley, for like my mantra this offseason is essentially that, especially after the first tier or two of guys, depending on how big your tiers are, landing spot I think is mattering more than it used to. It still doesn't matter as much as talent, and it changes faster than talent. The longest tenured offensive coordinators in the league, there's 2 of them. They were hired in 2022. So we know that situations change fast, but we've also seen the right situation, scheme, coaching, fit, right, make and break the start of careers and then the start of fantasy careers, like Kyron Williams, Puka, Tank Dell, guys like that, right? So I think that's Malachi Corley. Right. He showed a little bit at the Senior Bowl that he, has a little bit more in his repertoire of routes past 5 or 10 yards, but he is still going to be a guy that's a short ADOT and yak guy. And when he gets that yak and all that rack that was in the MAC, he's really breaking tackles. And it's a pleasure to watch. But, at the same time, is he going to land on a team where they don't know how to use him well, where he becomes slightly gadgety? Like having schemed touches isn't as bad as it used to be, like in the NFL. I mean, Rashee Rice, right? But having only schemed touches does narrow your path to success. So if that's already sort of what he's looking at, and he goes to a team that's not a right fit, I'm going to sink him below guys like, I don't know, Malik Washington or Javon Baker or Jalen Polk or Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall, right? Like because it's just not a right fit. I don't trust the team to use Malachi Corley well. If he goes to the right team, I think he could really hit year one and therefore increase in value as well. So he's an interesting guy that I think is an illustration of landing spot matters. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Can we kill comparing players?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
can we just get rid? He's like such a weird player and like outlier. There's not like we need to stop that.
Yeah, Debo's a one of one, right?
There's players with very unique skill sets. Like the next Tyreek Hill, there isn't a next Tyreek Hill. He's a one of one type player. Like we need to stop that shit.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's move to a couple of guys that are outside of our top 12s. And because we're up against the clock here, let's just keep it really short. Just mention your guys and, a quick blurb on each one of them. So, Ryan, go ahead and give us both of your guys there and why you like both these guys.
I'm going a safe one, Lad McConkey. I think he's a PPR machine. He gets open, he catches everything, he runs after the catch. I think he is a plug and play day one and can produce in fantasy. I love him. Late second round, maybe a little bit earlier. Other one, complete dart throw on the opposite line is Johnny Wilson, the other wide receiver from Florida State. Huge drop issues, some of the biggest I've ever seen. But at 6'7", 230, I think he's a player who could transition to tight end. And I think that transition, if he can figure out how to get his hands to work right all the time consistently, with his speed and that huge wingspan, it's like 8-foot wingspan, that's something you have to look at. Even if he stays at wide receiver, I think if he makes that transition, it can be really, and it's a very intriguing skill set.
Yeah, I forget who I was talking to.
Round flyer.
I forget who I was talking to. It may have been actually Jamie at one point. He was talking about, how big he is, 6'7", and I looked at the history of receivers at 6'7" or taller, and it's not great.
No,
but if he can transition to the tight end, then yeah, that would definitely be a plus for him. So
like Darren Waller made the transition. I'm not saying he's Darren Waller, it's not a comparison, but like you get these tall wide receivers who transition to tight end have done okay.
Yeah, agreed. So the two guys I got here, the first one is a running back, Mr. Frank Gore Jr. And, it's more about being a 49ers fan and watching having Frank Gore being one of my favorite players of all time. I want him to succeed. I do think he has a role in the NFL. I don't know if he has a role in Dynasty. But, you're getting him in probably the mid to late third round. He's definitely a good flyer that I like. I think, if he's got anywhere close to his dad's work ethic, I think he could be a guy that you can get, late third round, maybe even go undrafted in some of your super flex dynasty drafts. So yeah, Frank Gore is the one I have, and then I got Ricky Pearsall. Just he's kind of boring. I mean, to be honest, he's more just a consistent guy. He makes all the catches. He's a high IQ guy. He's very versatile. He can do a lot of different things. He's got a great release. A release package is one thing that I noticed when I watched him. But he does have trouble beating press man and creating separation a little bit. But he's the other guy that I'm kind of looking at as a late round guy that is a consistent guy. He's gonna be a good guy in an NFL team. So that's those are my two there. Brian, who you got for year two?
Yeah, it's a shame that Frank Gore Sr. couldn't hold on just a couple more years and we could get a Griffey situation, Like
what a backfield combination. Like we have that committee.
Ryan, are you old enough to remember when the Griffeys played on the same team, or?
Yeah, dude, right.
I mean, you made fun of us being alive in the '80s before, so I don't know.
I was born in the '80s. That poster right there behind me, autograph Griffey picture.
Nice, love it. Yeah. All right, so my two guys, Jalen Polk, talked a little bit about him before. Solid floor guy with a little bit of upside, well-rounded guy. You worry a little bit that Jalen McMillan was injured and he had the benefit of Rome Odunze there, but individually as a player, I think he's again solid floor, well-rounded, a little bit of upside. So I like him. He's my 13. He's in a tier of 10 to 13. The other guy I want to talk about is Jaquan Jackson, just because people talk about Malik Washington. He's already people's favorite sleeper. Javon Baker is already people's favorite sleeper. Malachi Corey is already people's favorite sleeper. Jacob Cowing is already Ricky. It's they've been talked about already. So let's talk about Jaquan Jackson, right? Slot receiver from Tulane, showed at the Senior Bowl that he's got a little bit more, verticality to his game, as far as stretching the field. I think he's quick and twitchy. He's got a stocky build at 5'9", 190, so he's kind of Rondell Moore-ish, Malik Washington-ish. He's got good speed. I think he can win at multiple levels of the field. I think it's not a stretch to see him be better than, say, Jacob Cowing, is next year. Obviously, a group of 5 competition, a little bit of physicality, questions in hands, and that sort of thing. I think he's the type of guy who, I don't say worst case scenario, but a reasonable, plausible floor for him is that he gets on a roster in maybe year 2. He's more of a starter. He's more of a wide receiver 3 on a team. Yeah,
fair enough. Like a taxi squad guy is what you're looking at for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we were going to do some listener questions, but we ran out of time, so let's go ahead and jump right into our Forgotten Fantasy Player.
Get ready for goingfor2.com's Forgotten Fantasy Player of the Week.
All right, so me and Ryan are going to be a little out of practice here. We got pretty good last year getting these Forgotten Fantasy Players, but after the guys that you just mentioned in your rookies primer here, Brian, I'm a little worried about our chances here. So give us your hints.
Yeah. This player played for 10 years, from 1992 to 2001, for 3 different teams.
What was the first year again? 92?
92. That's right in my wheelhouse here. So
it should definitely be in your wheelhouse. I was 7.
Nice. I started playing fantasy in 96, so that's right in my wheelhouse.
Right around when I started playing too, yeah.
So we're 3 years before I started playing fantasy. Okay, keep going.
All right. This aside from his 10th season, every other season he had at least 1,275 scrimmage yards.
So the fact that you're saying scrimmage yards
and at least 7 total touchdowns.
It's making me think he's a running back if he's using the word scrimmage yards. All right, 10-year career. Man, there's not a lot of running backs that had 10-year careers. All right, I'm going to need some more.
In 1996, in his age 27 season, he had 353 carries, 404 total touches, 1,855 scrimmage yards, 13 total touchdowns for his 5th Pro Bowl year in a row, his first 5 career seasons.
Wow.
He had 96.
He played for 3 teams, right? So he was good on 3 different teams. I think Corey Dillon is too late in the game. Corey Dillon was early 2000s, but wasn't all the way back in 92. Curtis Martin, does he fall in that? No.
Yeah, he was all Jets.
That's right. He was all Jets. You're right. Damn, this one's stumping me.
This running back who ran a 4.71 at the combine in the 40-yard dash.
Oh my gosh.
2 of the teams, one of them is the favorite team of one of you two. The last team is no longer in the division they were when he played for them.
No, Jamal Lewis, that'd be 2, because I think he was 2000.
No.
It wasn't
Priest Holmes.
So say that last one again. So
sure, he played on 3 teams. One of them is a favorite team of you two. Another of those teams is no longer in the division they were in when he played for them.
Damn.
So he went to the. Oh God, and he played on the Ravens and the Titans. I feel like with that comment. No way it was Eddie George. He never played for either of our teams. He just played for Oilers. Ooh.
I mean, back then the division for the 49ers, the Saints are no longer. They used to be in our division. They're no longer in the division. The Falcons used to be in our division. They're no longer in our division. So I would feel like it would be the 49ers and either the Falcons or the Saints.
49ers is one of the teams. The non-division team, the team that switched divisions, switched conferences.
Seattle. Okay. 49ers in Seattle. I can't think of not any running backs that were back then.
It wasn't Sean Alexander.
Played so long.
Jeff, this is your team in
I know, and I'm trying.
In your first fantasy championships, and you're drawing it.
I'm drawing blanks right now. 92. Where his best years, I guess you said for 10 years he was good, right? 1,200 yards, so it wasn't really his best years of anything.
You can't think of 1,200-yard rush on your own team when they were in the Super Bowl era?
I mean, yes, but it doesn't fit any of those other.
God.
Is it Roger Craig?
No.
That's too.
Who was running back?
He was in the 80s.
Yeah, he was in the 80s. He was Joe Montana. And then there was Ricky Waters. It's not Ricky Waters.
It's Ricky Running Waters.
Oh,
yes, it is. Yep.
He played for Seattle. Yep. I thought he was for the 49ers.
And the middle team was Philadelphia.
Ryan bringing heat for the first episode of the year. Jeez Louise.
It's funny. I was going to say Ricky Waters a while ago, and I don't know why I didn't say it out loud. I was like, nah, I can't be Ricky Waters. But yeah.
I just because of just how different running backs are now, I wanted to bring this guy up, right? Runs a 4.71 at the combine, 404 touches at his career peak. It was just a different NFL game back then. Yeah. He's listed as 6'1", 217.
Yeah, I think he still holds the record for most touchdowns in a playoff game. I believe he had 5 or 6 touchdowns the year they went to the Super Bowl. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, Ricky Waters.
Can someone smack Josh in the back of the head?
What do you say?
Jeff, I'm just going to say the 49ers lost in the Super Bowl because you're lacking the knowledge of the team. I blame you.
That's why they lost. It wasn't a lack of knowledge. It's just for some reason I couldn't put it together. And even when I got
crazy part is I I remember I was like trying to think who I liked in Madden back in the day, and I loved using Ricky Watters. So that was like the only thing. Like I wasn't playing fantasy; it was slowly getting the NFL and Madden.
Yeah. Great pull. I love it, Brian. Way to kick us off this year.
It's not quite Tom Tipple's Larry Centers the last time I was on the show as a sub for Ryan, but
That's right. I remember that.
I think I would have got Larry Centers.
That was a tough one. You would have gotten Larry Centers. Yeah, I think we had like 3 fullbacks this past year, and Larry Centers was one of them. All right, that wraps the show up, Brian. Thanks again for coming on short notice. If you want to, plug your Twitter handle and anything else you're working on, go ahead and do so.
FFJunkie _ on Twitter. Articles and rankings for rookies and Dynasty up on goingfor2.com. I'll be writing some rookie profiles in draft season. Dynasty Fever Pod midweek audio only at Dynasty Fever Pod on Twitter.
Good stuff. Ryan, what you got going on?
I don't do much. I'm here. I'm over at the Rookie Big Board and the Dynasty Big Board podcast, and that's about it. I talk sometimes. I don't really post on Twitter that much anymore because nobody cares about my opinions. But that's okay. I like bourbon. I like football. That's all good.
Good stuff. All right, guys. This is the first episode of the season. Hopefully, we weren't too rusty. Jamie, I know you're here for every show, so you can let us know how we did. But for Ryan, I'm Geoff, and we will be back next week.